Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Grace, Jackie, and Jessica here from Team A in Debate Group 2. In this presentation, we will be arguing that universities should not cater degree programs to fill skills gaps, and we will be approaching this topic from the perspective of university administrators. As we begin our presentation, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional lands across Canada that we are all fortunate to live, learn, work, and play on. Specifically, we would like to recognize the land of the Esquimalt and Songhees ancestors, where Royal Roads University currently exists today. As we get started, here is an overview of what we'll be looking at today in our opening arguments. We're going to start by outlining what the skills gap is and highlight some references to the skills gap conversation taking place in the media. We'll move on to our supporting points, highlighting the mission of the university, funding barriers for universities to respond to skills gaps, and the difficulties that the governing structures of universities create in order to introduce programs that respond to skills gaps. An alternative model will then be proposed, and we will conclude with a summary.
Before we go much further, we need to talk about exactly what the skills gap is, and also point out that that's a fairly nebulous concept, so let's cover some of the ideas floating around in the media, both professional and popular. In a recent Forbes article, Liz Ryan describes the skill gap broadly as a difference in skills required by employers and the skills that employees possess. More concretely, a Conference Board of Canada report discusses the skills gap in terms of credentialing. So in a survey of Ontario employers, over half of respondents wanted employees with a college diploma, and 41% wanted employees with a trade certification, versus 44% with a 4-year implicitly university degree. And again, those percentages are intended to overlap. Now, if we go beyond credentials to look at labor market outcomes, that issue goes far beyond credentialing. Upal and La Rochelle Cote at StatsCan found that the share of young people with university degrees in Canada who are overqualified for their jobs has increased since the early 1990s. And at the even more basic level, Metcalf and Fenwick, as well as Taylor, Trumpauer, and Pavic, look at the fact that there are a significant proportion of Canadians who lack essential numeracy and literacy skills needed for employability, and some of the policy initiatives, particularly at the federal level, that have been implemented to address that. I want to move this along, so I'll say that for some more information, you can refer to our supplemental forum post and media resources about the skills gap. But just to do a quick dive further into Canadian media perspectives, Bonnie Patterson made a case in the Globe and Mail for the fact that workers not only need the core disciplinary skills provided at a university, as well as the applied skills provided by colleges. And as we know, Bonnie Patterson is the former head of COU. Now, a recent Financial Post article discusses the role of continuing education and personalized learning in helping lifelong learners to adapt to the changing skills requirements that can cause a skills gap to emerge in the economy. And regional development economist Jeff Boggs asserts that blaming universities for the skills gap is unrealistic, and in fact the term he uses is asinine, due to the reality that curriculum developers cannot foresee all future skills requirements, as well as there being a lack of evidence that there's any type of widespread undersupply of qualified workers in the Canadian labor market. I can go on about this forever, but please refer to our references and forum posts. Let's move this one along.
In the next section of our presentation, we will discuss the primary reasons why universities should not be relied on to close the skills gap. Since the creation of universities, they have maintained a consistent mission to provide students with liberal and professional education. This mission has remained the same for centuries, with only minor modifications overcoming political, economic, and sociological changes. This underscores the significance of the university's mission. Universities set out to help students develop soft skills that are transferable to many industries and workplaces. According to Frank Rhodes, former president of Cornell University, graduate schooling is meant to help students develop judgment and balance with professional skills in a specific area. Both judgment and balance are desired skills in the workforce. University students continue to experience high employment rates. Furthermore, many successful people with liberal arts degrees go on to work in various fields unrelated to their discipline. In opposition, colleges in Canada have experienced significant changes to their mission over their relatively short history. At present, the mission of a college is a bit challenging to define due to the significant changes in that industry. That being said, their primary role is to focus on their community and local labor market. Consequently, according to the mission of colleges, addressing the skills gap would fall to them. Ontario is one of the only provinces with separate advocacy organizations for university and colleges. Therefore, they act as an excellent example as they are able to demonstrate the key differences between universities and colleges. According to Ontario College's Strategic Plan 2015 to 2018, a key goal was to help close the skills gap by working with government and other stakeholders. In contrast, Ontario universities state their purpose is to give students practical skills for their future career, with no specific mention of addressing the skills gap.
Our next argument is about how universities and colleges address their funding challenges from a mission-based perspective. Now, academic capitalism is a term many of you have heard, and it's described by Metcalf in her 2010 article as a phenomenon where neoliberalism and new public management have changed the funding relationship between governments and post-secondary institutions. Metcalf uses revenue and expenditure data from Canada's post-secondary institutions to show how that's taken shape here in this country. And one thing that she specifically highlights at Canadian universities is that, like all other institutions, they're expanding their revenue base, they're expanding their offerings, but the offerings that they're expanding, that's mostly a function of research commercialization and public industry partnerships, such as through the Canada Foundation for Innovation. Further to that point, when we look outside Canada to find stronger support for how mission matters to how institutions earn their income, Teixeira, Rocha, Biscaya, and Cardoso in Portugal examined revenue diversification in that country's post-secondary sector and found the presence of postgraduate students and faculty with terminal degrees plays a significant role in institutional revenue diversification. Again, specifically the ability to attract research funding from private sources. Polytechnic institutions in Portugal were found to have grown their income sources as well in the study, but they saw a greater impact from adding undergraduate students. So again, that's about providing direct support for the skills gap. Now, one of the other ways that we can look at this is through the provision of non-credit education. There's a fair bit of data out there that shows that particularly in the United States as well as in Canada, non-credit education plays a really strong role in helping to close that skills gap, whether it's from essential skills education to providing micro-credentials for people looking to pick up an extra technical skill. To that end, it makes sense to examine how non-credit education factors into institutional revenue mixes. So in Canada, based on some StatsCan data from the 2016-2017 academic year, we can find that the proportion of revenue that Canada's colleges and technical institutes earn from non-credit education is nearly twice that of what universities earn. So these points together underscore the idea that from the perspective of administrators thinking about how to manage their funding challenges in a way that's consistent with what their institutions do, skills gap training and colleges are a perfect fit, more so than addressing the skills gap at universities.
Thank you, Jackie. We will now discuss how the governance structures of universities prevent university programs from filling the skills gap. In order for universities to respond to or anticipate economic needs or trends, programs must be developed at a fairly quickly rate. The processes to introduce a new program vary by institution and province. We will highlight Ontario as an example. In Ontario, institutions must respond to the University's Council on Quality Assurance, which outlines 9 steps to introduce new undergraduate and graduate programs. This process takes, on average, 5 or more years and does not count for the actual curriculum development. In their study on the effectiveness of university senates, Pennick, Jones, Leclerc, and Lee found that many Senate members feel that the sheer size of university senates is too large. This leads to the hindrance of Senate functions, slowing down processes that can be seen as already slow. In order to create or adjust programs that respond to workforce needs, the size and infrequent meeting structure of senates are a significant barrier. The same study outlined that academic program review is only one of many issues that the Senate oversees. With most senates meeting only 9 to 12 times per year, it's not surprising that the process to introduce and approve new programs is slow. Lastly, the authors found that the Senate members felt that the working relationships of the Senate and the Board of Governors at institutions with bicameral governance could be improved. At some institutions, members of the two groups only met once per year to discuss academic initiatives. This structure, combined with the slow responses, prohibits universities from creating innovative programs. In his article, Assessing the Skills Gap, Jeff Boggs reasons that it's unreasonable to expect universities to identify skills that will be desired of future grads, and that in many cases it is the responsibility of each company to train their employees. Citing examples in healthcare and IT, Martin Hicks argues that when universities have adjusted enrollments or programs to meet predicted economic needs, the predictions were still incorrect and there were still skill shortages. Universities cannot respond to economic trends in a timely manner to be effective in creating programs that fill current skills gaps. Furthermore, it is not realistic to expect university senates or curriculum developers to predict future needs of employers when industry itself often struggles to do so.
Although universities may not have a direct role to play in filling the skills gap, there are some strategies that can be implemented to help lessen the burden. By preparing young people for lifelong learning, they are encouraging students to adapt to their environment and go back to school and take classes to upgrade throughout their career. By expanding their continuing education offering, they are offering more classes that are specialized to meet the labor market without having students complete an entire degree. And by partnering with colleges, they are allowing students to fulfill both their degree requirement as well as get practical hands-on learning through a college. In summary, the university mission should remain consistent, focusing on liberal and professional education, and they should continue to teach soft skills to promote lifelong learning and adaptability. The governance structure of universities has too many processes in place to be dynamic to current economic needs. Additionally, universities' focus on increasing research capacity for revenue limits our ability to focus on skills training. Lastly, filling the skills gap through universities is unrealistic due to the ever-changing labor market requirements. It is an impractical ask to expect universities to address the skills gap as it deviates far from their core functions.